there is a researcher standing in a room full of crying babies. Not one or two dozens. Infants from Britain, Canada, Italy, the Netherlands, and the United States, all of them screaming. And then he looks to the corner of the room. The Japanese babies are quiet, not sleeping, not sedated. Just calm. He runs the study again. Same result, and again. Same result. So he finally asks the question no one had ever thought to ask before. What are Japanese mothers doing in the first 90 days of a baby's life that no one else on the planet is doing? The answer is 2 words. And by the end of this video, you'll not only know what those 2 words are, you'll know exactly how to use them tonight. Welcome back to Bloom School by Sora, the channel where we go deep into the real science of your baby's world. The research that most parenting books skip over. The findings that quietly change everything. Today, we're going to Japan. Not because Japanese culture is superior. Not because every Japanese mother is doing everything right. But because the data keeps returning to the same uncomfortable, fascinating truth. Japanese babies cry less, sleep better, and develop emotional self-regulation earlier than infants in almost every other country studied. And the reason has nothing to do with genetics, nothing to do with diet, and nothing to do with anything you've ever been told before. Stay with me, because what we're about to unpack will genuinely shift the way you see your baby. Let's start with the numbers, because they are startling. Researchers at the University of Warwick conducted one of the most comprehensive infant crying studies ever attempted. They analyzed data from 8,690 babies across multiple countries, tracking a single variable: how much babies cried and fussed during the first 12 weeks of life. The results were published in the Journal of Pediatrics. British babies cried the most. Canadian babies came in a close second. Italian, Dutch, and American infants ranked high. And at the very bottom of the list, crying the least, fussing the least, with the lowest documented rates of colic in the entire study, were Japanese babies. Only 2% of Japanese infants showed signs of colic in their first 6 weeks. In Canada, that number was over 34%. Same species, same biology, same fundamental needs, so something else entirely is at work here. Here's where it gets profound. Japanese parenting is constructed around a philosophy that Western culture largely set aside decades ago. And that philosophy has 2 parts, 2 words to be precise. The first is Amae, the second is Mimamoru. Understanding both of these concepts will change the way you look at your baby permanently. Amae, pronounced Omaye, was first described and named by Japanese psychiatrist Takeo Doi. It doesn't translate cleanly into English, which is part of why Western parenting culture never absorbed it. The closest translation is something like the DAP expectation of being understood without having to ask. Sit with that for a moment. What does that mean for a baby who has no language, no words, no way to articulate a need except through distress? In the Western parenting model, the dominant framework is reactive. Baby cries, parent responds. The baby learns it has a voice. That model isn't wrong, it genuinely builds self-expression and self-recognition in a child, but there's a cost buried inside it. Every time the baby needs something, they must first travel through distress to get it. The cry is the ticket. The suffering is the mechanism. Japanese mothers operate from an entirely different premise. Their goal isn't to respond to distress. Their goal is to prevent distress from ever arriving. Japanese mothers spend an average of just 2 hours per week away from their baby in the first year of life. The comparable figure for American mothers is closer to 24 hours. Japanese mothers carry their babies constantly in slinges against their bodies on their backs. They co-sleep. They watch. They anticipate. And here's what the research shows happens in the baby's nervous system as a result. The brain never learns to escalate, because escalation was never necessary. The gap between a need arising and that need being met becomes so consistently small that the baby's neurological wiring reorganizes itself around a completely different baseline. Calm becomes the default setting. The intense, sustained crying that babies in other countries develop, Japanese babies simply never needed to build that pattern to the same degree. Now for the second word, Mimamoru. It translates as watch and protect. It is the Japanese practice of observing your baby so closely, so continuously, that you begin to read them before they speak, before they cry, before they fuss. You learn the microsignals, the faint tension in the shoulders that appears 3 minutes before hunger escalates, the subtle shift in breathing, that sign, overstimulation building, the particular quality of stillness that precedes emotional overwhelm. Most parents in Western cultures don't see these signals, not because we don't care deeply, but because their cultural framework never taught them to look for them at this level. Mimamoru says, "Your baby is always communicating. Your job is to become fluent in a language that has no words. And when parents do this, when they catch the signal before the cry, something profound happens neurologically in the infant. The baby's brain doesn't just feel calmer in that moment. It learns something at a cellular level. The world is predictable. The world is responsive. I am safe. This is the neurological foundation of what developmental psychologists call secure attachment. And it turns out it is also the foundation of something even more far-reaching: self-regulation, the ability to manage emotions, to delay gratification, to stay composed under stress. Skills that surface decades later. Classrooms, in relationships, in careers built in the first 90 days by a mother who simply watched. There is one more piece of research worth knowing, because this one you can use tonight. Scientists at the RIKEN Brain Science Institute in Japan studied exactly what happens physiologically when a mother picks up a crying baby. They attached heart rate monitors to crying infants and tested different conditions: holding while seated, rocking in a chair, being pushed in a stroller. And then they tried one final condition: being carried by a walking mother for 5 minutes. The results were unambiguous. When a mother picked up her crying baby and walked, not sat, not rocked, but walked with smooth, forward movement, every single baby in the study stopped crying within 5 minutes. Everyone. The biology behind this is elegant. When an infant is carried by a moving caregiver, a cascade of physiological responses activates. Heart rate drops. Muscle tone softens. Cortisol, the principal, primary stress hormone, begins to fall. The baby's nervous system recognizes a pattern encoded millions of years deep. I am being carried. I am moving. I am safe. 5 minutes of walking. That's it. Not a gadget. Not a method. Not a $200 white noise machine. Now, I want to be honest with you, because the research deserves honesty. Japanese parenting is not perfect, and it isn't universally achievable. The level of physical closeness it demands, the constant carrying, the co-sleeping, the 2 hours per week away, is genuinely impossible for many families. For parents without extended support networks. For those who must work full-time. For single parents who are already doing the impossible every day. And something else the data shows: this level of closeness has real trade-offs. Japanese children, while remarkably advanced in emotional self-regulation, show slightly later development of independence and self-directed behavior compared to Western children. Both paths produce healthy, approximately, able to perform tasks. They just reach that destination differently. So take the principles. Apply what you honestly can. Here are 4, distilled from everything we've covered. First, the pre-cry scan. Every morning before anything else, spend 60 seconds simply observing your baby. Not feeding, not stimulating, just looking. Learn their baseline. Learn their quiet language. The more fluent you become, the less they need to shout. Second, the 5-minute walk. The next time your baby is inconsolable, pick them up and walk. Smooth steps, forward movement, 5 minutes. Trust the biology, it works. Gap reduction. You don't have to transform your entire life to close the distance between your baby's need and your response. Even shaving 30 seconds off your reaction time, catching the early signal before full escalation, changes the entire interaction. Fourth, the Amae question. Instead of asking yourself, how do I respond to my baby? Ask, what does my baby need before they lie me? That single shift from reactive to anticipatory, from responder to reader. That's the entire philosophy, distilled into one question you can ask yourself every day. Here is what I want you to carry with you. A crying baby is not a broken baby. A crying baby is a baby whose gap between need and response has grown too wide. Japanese parents understood this intuitively for generations before any research ever confirmed it. Not through rigid schedules, not through techniques, but through presence. Through attention. Through the radical, quiet act of knowing your baby so deeply that they never have to ask twice. Amae and Mimamoru, watch. Anticipate, respond before the cry. That is the Japanese secret. And now it belongs to you. If this video opened something up for you, if it changed the way you see your baby's world, hit subscribe. Every week, Bloom School by Sora goes deeper into the real science of infant psychology. The hidden research, the findings that matter. See you next week.